Kearsarge was built at Portsmouth Navy Yard in Kittery, Maine, United States, under the 1861 American Civil War Emergency Shipbuilding Program. The new 1,550 long tons steam sloop-of-war was launched on September 11, 1861, and was commissioned on January 24, 1862, with Captain Charles W. Pickering in command. Soon after, she was hunting the Confederate raiders in European waters. Kearsarge deported Portsmouth, Maine on February 5, 1862 for the coast of Spain. She then sailed to Gibraltar to join the blockade of Confederate raider CSS Sumter, forcing the ship's abandonment there in December of 1862. However, CSS Sumter's commander, Captain Raphael Semmes, having returned to England for reassignment, was soon recommissioning off the Azores. In international waters, in the newly built British sloop Enrica adds CSS Alabama. From Cadiz, Spain, in November of 1862 until March 1863, USS Kearsarge prepared for her engagement with CSS Alabama. The following year, on June 14, 1864, Kearsarge arrived at Cherbourg, France, and found Alabama in port. USS Kearsarge took up station at the harbor's entrance to await Captain Semmes' next move. On June 19, CSS Alabama stood out of Cherbourg Harbor for her last action. Mindful of French neutrality, USS Kearsarge new commanding officer Captain John A. Winslow took the sloop-of-war clear of territorial waters, then turned to meet the Confederate cruiser. This should really be one paragraph. CSS Alabama was the first to open fire, while USS Kearsarge held her reply until she had closed to less than 1,000 yards. Steaming on opposite courses, the ships moved in 7 spiraling circles on a southwardly course, as each commander tried to cross his opponent's bow to deliver deadly raking fire. The battle quickly turned against the Alabama due to her poor gunnery and the quality of her long-stored and deteriorating powder, fuses, and shells. 1 hour after the battle began, CSS Alabama was reduced to a sinking wreck by Kearsarge's more accurate gunnery and its powerful 280mm Dahlgren smoothbore pivot cannons. CSS Alabama went down by the stern shortly after Captain Semmes struck his colors, threw his sword into the sea to avoid capture, and sent one of his 2 remaining longboats to USS Kearsarge with a message of surrender and a rescue appeal for his surviving crew. USS Kearsarge finally sent boats for the majority of CSS Alabama survivors, but Captain Semmes and 41 others were rescued instead by the nearby British yacht Deerhound and escaped to the United Kingdom. USS Kearsarge then sailed along the French coast in an unsuccessful search for the commerce raider CSS Florida, then proceeded to the Caribbean before turning northward for Boston, Massachusetts, where she was decommissioned for repairs on November 26. She was recommissioned 4 months later on April 1, 1865, and sailed for the coast of Spain on April 14th in an attempt to intercept CSS Stonewall. The Confederate ram eluded Federal warships and surrendered to Spanish authorities at Havana, Cuba on May 19th. After cruising the Mediterranean Sea and the English Channel south to Monrovia, Liberia, USS Kearsarge was decommissioned on August 14, 1866 in the Boston Navy Yard. USS Kearsarge was recommissioned on January 16, 1868 and sailed on February 12th to serve in the South Pacific, operating out of Valparaiso, Chile. On August 22nd, she landed provisions for destitute earthquake victims in Peru. She continued to watch over American commercial interests along the coast of South America until April 17, 1869. Then she sailed to watch over American interests among some South Pacific islands. She also called at ports in New South Wales, Australia, and in New Zealand, before returning to Callao, Peru on October 31st. She resumed duties on the South Pacific Station until July 21st, 1870, then cruised to the Hawaiian Islands before being decommissioned in the Mare Island Navy Yard on October 11th, 1870. USS Kearsarge was recommissioned on December 8th, 1873 and departed on March 4th, 1874 for Yokohama, Japan, arriving there on May 11th. She cruised on Asiatic Station for 3 years, protecting American citizens and commerce in China, Japan, and the Philippines. From September 4th to December 13th, she carried Professor Asaph Hall's scientific party from Nagasaki, Japan to Vladivostok, Russia, to observe the transit of Venus. USS Kearsarge then returned to Boston Navy Yard on December 30th and was decommissioned at Portsmouth, New Hampshire, United States on January 15th, 1878. USS Kearsarge was recommissioned yet again on May 15, 1879 for 4 years of duty in the North Atlantic, ranging from Newfoundland, Canada to the Caribbean Sea and to the coast of Panama. The warship took part in dedication ceremonies for the Brooklyn Bridge in New York City on May 24, 1883. She then departed New York on August 21, 1883 to cruise for 3 years in the Mediterranean, then northern European waters, and finally along the west coast of Africa. She returned to Portsmouth, New Hampshire, United States on November 12th and was decommissioned in the Portsmouth Navy Yard on December 1st, 1886. USS Kearsarge was recommissioned one last time on November 2nd, 1888. And largely spent her remaining years protecting American interests in the West Indies, off of Venezuela, and along the Central Americas. In October 1889, she carried famed American abolitionist Frederick Douglass to Haiti, where Frederick Douglass was to be Minister and Consul General. On U.S. President Harrison's orders, she sailed to Nassau Island in 1891 to investigate labor conditions there. She departed Haiti on January 20th, 1894, for Bluefields, Nicaragua, but she wrecked on a reef off Recondor Cay on the 2nd of February.